Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, Eskom is implementing stage 6 blackouts until further notice. There's been concern that South Africa was plunged into stage 8 rolling blackouts without notice. Both Eskom and Electricity Minister Mokopa failed to update the nation on this. Are we going to have another dark, cold winter? Well, let's discuss this with Matthew Cruz, who is the head of business intelligence at Hohm Energy. Thank you very much, Mr. Cruz, for joining us here on eNCA. I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert, right? But I noticed that, what gave me the idea that we might be at a higher stage of load shedding was that usually when I'm at stage 6 load shedding, I don't share the same schedule or time frame as many of my friends. But suddenly now, all of our areas are off between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. It just made us wonder if maybe because they've added areas, maybe we are at a higher stage of load shedding.
So yeah, thank you for having me on the show. And it is an interesting case that we find ourselves here in South Africa, where technically we're sitting on the schedule of stage 6. So you'll see in the top right, it says stage 6 at the moment, and that's been announced indefinitely. But what actually is being shed from the grid is more than stage 6. We're technically at stage 8 in the amount of gigawatts that are being shed from the grid. And this is the first time we've seen Eskom saying that we're shedding 5,700 megawatts, but we're doing load curtailment of stage 4 on our contracted customers of 1,400 megawatts. So it's a new way of reporting from Eskom, and it seems to be a bit of fancy footwork for them not to officially declare that we're in stage 8. And very thankfully, they haven't switched over to the stage 8 schedule, because that would look quite different at stage 8 time schedules than we are at the moment. So it seems like they're filling out the hours of stage 6, because sometimes you'll have your power coming back a bit before, or it'll go off a bit after when the schedules go off. But now they're filling out fully stage 6, and they're implementing that, and they're resisting going to stage 8 in terms of the schedule that we're on. But we are there already with the amount of gigawatts that we've shed.
Explain to us this curtailment. What are they trying to tell us, really?
So it's interesting to see that curtailment's coming about now. And my 11 years in Eskom, we always knew that these contracted clients that are the biggest users in the country, that these are the mines and the smelters, the metal smelters, steelwork smelters, agreeing with Eskom that if they pull back the power when Eskom requests it, then they'll get some kind of financial incentive through the cost of electricity that they are paying. So this is a program that's been implemented for at least 10 years now already, but it hasn't been really reported by Eskom. So it's contracted clients to Eskom, the biggest users in the country, that have agreed to pull back demand when Eskom requests it. And now we're starting to get some insight into that program. So it's not just something that's all of a sudden started up happening now, but it seemed to be, as I say, fancy footwork of making it seem like things are happening. But meanwhile, it's been like this for a while now.
Is it even fair to South Africans and citizens at large that we are being expected to understand all these words? It seems to me that they're trying to be smart in using words such as curtailment and, saying that it's just stage 6 and whatnot, but actually hiding the truth from us. Is that even fair? Is it allowed?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there with it's not fair. And I actually see this as a situation where they're trying to delay the truth coming out, but it will only be for a couple of months that they can really delay the truth. And the truth is that we will have stage 8 load shedding this year, and potentially even up to stage 10. The reason why I say that is the electricity minister recently said if everything remains equal at the moment, just the demand increase in winter alone will take our current state that we're in at the moment to stage 10, and there's no real generation capacity that's scheduled to come online until August, when the Kuiper 1 will come online. So it's a bit of fancy footwork to not immediately announce stage 8, but stage 8 is coming in 2 months anyway. So I see it as a futile effort.
Well, for me, I think also the other thing is the constitutional rights of the poorest of the poor, because they're the ones who cannot afford your inverters, generators, etc. And they are going to have to try and look into the Oxford Dictionary to find out what curtailment means, etc. So obviously a very bleak winter waiting for South Africa in a few months' time. But also, can you just explain to me what happened here, if you know at all? I mean, before, and I don't want to necessarily really, put the link there, etc. But it was literally a week before that national shutdown by the EFF, where Eskom released this beautiful statement saying that there are generating units in some of our power stations that were operating at lower than 55% level back in June last year and are now at 70–80%. What happened in just 2 weeks for those generating units that suddenly improved to suddenly go back to, flopping?
Yes. So it wasn't necessarily the exact same units that have shown improvements that are flopping, as one puts it. What's happened is that we have had a gradual decline in our ability to generate power across all the power stations, both the new and the old. And this continuing trend has been happening actually for the last 6 years. So now is the time when the trend is coming to light, in that we're seeing it in the stages of load shedding continuously increasing. And we did have a bit of fancy footwork once again with the units coming back that had been on maintenance during the summer months in preparation for a hard winter. Those all came back just before we're going into the winter months. And that's all the generation capacity that's coming back online that we're seeing. So they came all back. Then we had a little bit of a reprieve from load shedding for a very minimal time. And now, unfortunately, the continuing trend of the old power stations breaking down and the new power stations not being able to provide much power is resulting in us having now going back up the load shedding stages into winter. And it seems like it's only going to get worse, unfortunately.
So as an expert, I mean, tell me the truth. Do we really need this Ministry of Electricity if things are still looking this bad, things are going to look worse? And we've always known that Kuberg would come back online in August and that there'd be units at Medupi that would come back between November and December. That's always been the case before his appointment. So why do we have him there?
So yeah, this is something that I'm quite opinionated about, because I'm actually providing input directly to the presidency through the structures that have been implemented in the electricity minister coming into power. And so I actually see some direct impact of this electricity minister and the things that he's been doing in terms of forming work groups, coming to the private sector. Our company was the only company that was asked initially to provide input regarding the solar rooftop market and how the government can come to the party and help resolving this crisis. So I actually see direct impact and things happening as a result of the electricity minister coming into power, which I'm very excited about. So a simple example is, a month ago, I pointed out to the government that the Vietnam government was able to solve their load shedding issue in a period of 6 months by incentivizing solar rooftop. And over a period of 6 months, they got 9,000 megawatts or 9 stages of load shedding incentivized to be put onto the grid that they didn't pay for by putting a 20-year tariff in place. So I said that to the government through the presidency a month and a half ago. And then 3 weeks ago, we received input that they're now engaged with the Vietnam government to find out how they did this, to get learning lessons and to see if they can do the same here in South Africa. So I do actually see decent, from my personal experience, I do see decent movements now that the electricity minister is in place towards solutions in the right place, towards correct solutions. This is a bit late, though. It's been about 5 years delayed, but now it's finally starting to happen. So I see some renewed focus and some direct reporting to the presidency coming about as a result of the electricity minister. So I'm encouraged from my side.
All right, maybe we should just give him a chance. It's only been a couple of weeks. I think as South Africans, I think we're just frustrated and we just want to see the end to this thing. But thank you so much for speaking to us here on eNCA. That was, of course, energy expert Matthew Cruz. And I mean, at some point we were told that Eskom would try and buy some energy from countries such as Botswana. Over the weekend, family members of mine from Botswana did say that they were told that Murupule power station, for instance, generating units have started to collapse there, and they are also going to start experiencing load shedding. So it's a never-ending story in Africa, unfortunately.